My name is Evelyn Parker. I'm 72 years old, and last spring, my son told me I was too old to go on vacation. He said it gently, the way people do when they think soft delivery makes hard truths easier. Long flights are tough, Mom. We just don't want you to get tired. Someone needs to stay and watch the house, anyway. His wife Jenna chimed in with a smile, handing me a short list: water the plants, collect the mail, double lock the back door. It wasn't cruel. Not directly. But it landed like a closed door. One I hadn't even realized I was standing behind. They were going to Greece. Michael, Jenna, and their 2 children Toby and Chloe. A big family trip. Beaches, ruins, fresh seafood, and sun. I would have loved that once. I stood in the driveway as they loaded their bags into the car. The kids didn't notice I wasn't coming. Why would they? I always stayed back. I waved as the van rolled out. They didn't look back. That night I made tea and sat in the kitchen. The silence was thick, the kind that presses against your chest. I looked at the fridge where Chloe's drawings were pinned. One of them was a son wearing sunglasses and a note. To Grandma. I love you. The next morning I went out to check the mailbox and found an envelope addressed to Jenna. Inside were the family's plane tickets. They hadn't mailed them yet. 4 tickets. Round trip to Athens. Departure in 3 days. My name wasn't there. Of course it wasn't. I stood on the porch with that envelope in my hand, heart pounding like I'd found evidence of something I wasn't supposed to see. But I wasn't angry. Not exactly. I was done. I walked back inside, placed the envelope on the table, and stared at it. Then I reached for the phone and called the travel agency. I'd like to cancel these tickets, I said. There was a pause on the other end. The young woman sounded confused. Can I ask why, ma'am? No, I said calmly, just cancel them. I wrote down the confirmation number. Then I poured myself another cup of tea and sat in the chair by the window. The sun was rising, casting light across the floorboards. I wasn't just going to watch the house anymore. This time I was going to watch the world. I didn't cancel their tickets to be spiteful. I canceled them because I realized something that morning, something quiet but sharp. I'd been left behind so many times I'd forgotten what it felt like to choose myself. After I hung up with the travel agent, I sat still for a long time. My hands were shaking a little, but not from guilt, from nerves, from adrenaline, from a question that had started echoing in my chest. What if I just went? I opened the drawer where I kept my old passport. It was still valid. Blue cover, edges worn from years of disuse. I hadn't flown in decades, but I could. I pulled out my savings notebook. $12,000 in the account. A little more in bonds. No debt, no one relying on me, not really. Michael didn't need me. Jenna certainly didn't. And Chloe, well, she was old enough to pour her own cereal now. I was just the backup plan, the safety net. The one they called when something went wrong, but never the one they brought along when something went right. I went online and booked a flight to Athens, 1 seat, aisle. It left the same day theirs did. Then I called my neighbor Carol. Hey Carol, can you water the plants for a week or 2? Sure, hun, she said. Going somewhere? Just a little trip, I replied. I packed 1 small suitcase. Comfy shoes, a navy blue dress I hadn't worn since my husband Frank's funeral. Not because I was grieving, but because it made me look sharp, and somewhere along the way, I forgot how to dress like I mattered. I also packed a scarf I used to love, yellow and soft. It still smelled faintly of lavender from the last time I wore it, maybe 10 years ago. That night, I sat on the porch and watched the wind rustle through the ivy. I thought about what they'd say when they found out. Maybe they'd call, maybe they wouldn't. But for once, I didn't care. I wasn't waiting for a text. I wasn't waiting to be missed. I was leaving, on my own 2 feet, with my name on the ticket. Not as a +1. Not as an afterthought. Just as me. The airport felt like a foreign country all on its own. Loud, metallic, glass walls and people rushing in all directions. I hadn't flown since the late 90s. Back then, you could still walk someone to the gate. Now everything beeped and scanned and hummed like the future had no room for the past. But I moved through it like I belonged. That's the trick. I learned: walk like you're expected somewhere, and no one questions why you're there. At the gate, the young agent glanced at my passport and smiled politely. "Enjoy your flight, Mom." I didn't answer, just nodded, stepped forward, and gripped my boarding pass like a shield. The flight was long. I barely slept. My thoughts were loud, louder than the engine. But somewhere over the Mediterranean, as the sky shifted from steel to soft gold, I looked out the window and saw the blue deeper, wider than I'd imagined. And that's when it hit me. I'd really done it. No one had invited me. No one was waiting on the other end. I hadn't even told my son. But there I was, heading to a country I couldn't pronounce half the streets of, because I chose to go. I landed in Athens just past noon. The heat hugged me immediately, not like home. It was thicker, slower. I liked it. The taxi driver didn't speak much English, but he smiled and nodded when I pointed to the address. A little pension tucked on a quiet side street, not fancy, but clean. The woman at the desk called me madam like it still meant something. She handed me a brass key and pointed to the stairs. In the room, I didn't unpack. I just sat on the edge of the bed, looking at the tiled floor, my suitcase still by the door. I didn't cry. Grief doesn't always look like tears. Sometimes it's just silence. A long exhale after years of holding your breath. That evening I walked a few blocks. Nothing ambitious. Just enough to find a small bakery. I ordered olives and bread and sat by the window. No one was waiting for updates. No one was expecting a check-in. And for the first time in a long while, I didn't feel forgotten. I felt free. It was 2 mornings later, in the pension's breakfast nook, that I met her. I was sipping coffee at a small table near the window, buttering my toast a little too generously because who was going to stop me, when a voice floated from the next table. "You use too much butter?" I looked up. A woman about my age, silver hair swept into a bun, that didn't care about trends, eyes sharp behind delicate half-moon glasses. She didn't smile, not exactly, but there was kindness tucked in the corners of her mouth. "Better than too little," I replied. She nodded once. "Fair." That was it. That was how I met Rose Chandler, retired school principal from Maine, traveling alone. "Widowed," she said, like it was just another item on her packing list. We didn't become instant best friends. But we started walking together slow, morning strolls through cobbled streets and flower box alleys. She noticed things most people didn't. The chipped edge of a doorway painted lavender. A cat asleep beside a statue. A woman humming to herself while folding laundry behind an open window. Rose didn't take pictures. She just looked. And when she looked at me, she really saw me not as someone's mother, not as someone's forgotten extra, but as a fellow traveler, whole and complete. Over lunch, we talked more. She told me about the students she used to teach, especially the troublemakers she secretly rooted for. I told her about my garden, how the tomatoes never listened no matter how sweetly I begged them to grow. She asked about my family. "They're fine," I said, a little too quickly. "They just thought I was too old to travel." Her eyes narrowed slightly. "They said that to you?" I nodded. She didn't react with outrage, just took a slow sip of her wine and said, "Well, you're here. So they were wrong." That night, I couldn't sleep. Not from jet lag, but from something stirring, a thought I hadn't dared to let surface. Maybe I wasn't the one who had been shrinking. Maybe they'd just stopped looking. And maybe it was time I let myself be seen again. We didn't plan it. One morning over coffee, Rose looked up from her map and said, "Florence isn't far." I blinked. "Italy." She raised an eyebrow. "You got another Florence in mind?" We booked 2 one-way train tickets that afternoon. 2 women in their 70s, buying seats like college kids on a summer break. We laughed about it over dinner, nervous, ridiculous laughter that felt strangely good. Florence was a soft dream. Golden light, slow museums, tired feet, and endless art. We stood in front of Botticelli's Birth of Venus, silent for a long time. I didn't feel awe. I felt recognition. The kind of beauty that doesn't scream. The kind that waits for you to slow down and notice. One night, we found a small wine bar. Rose flirted with the waiter, who couldn't have been younger than 35. She wasn't pretending to be younger, just alive. And it worked. I envied that. She turned to me as we walked home and said, "You sit taller now." I paused. Do I? She nodded, less folded. From Florence, we wandered into Lisbon. It welcomed us like a warm song, crooked streets, tile walls, the scent of roasted chestnuts, and sea air. But something was different there. One morning, I opened my phone and found a message from my granddaughter, Chloe. It was just a voice memo. Grandma, I don't think you're mad. I think you're tired of being left behind. I would be too. You look really happy in that photo. I miss you. I hadn't sent her a photo. But Rose had. There I was standing on our balcony, one arm resting on the rail, looking out at the street. Not posing, not smiling, just existing. And somehow, that was enough to be noticed. Later that afternoon, I sat by the window with my journal and started a new list. Things I'd never said out loud. I was never tired, I just got tired of not being seen. Every time you called me old-fashioned, I swallowed a sentence I should have said. I miss being called by my name. That night, I cooked dinner for the two of us. Eggs, tomatoes, crusty bread. Rose thanked me not just for the food but for staying. I nodded. She didn't ask what I was writing. She didn't need to. Some truths, once spoken, don't need explanation. Just space. Seville wasn't on the itinerary. But then again, neither were we. Rose brought it up over breakfast one morning. Seville, she said. The light there is different, makes everything feel like a stage. I smiled. You planning to perform? She grinned. Only if you join me. We arrived by train in the late afternoon. The air was warm, sweet with orange blossoms and old guitar strings. Our room overlooked a courtyard lined with laundry lines and clay pots. Somewhere nearby, a flamenco guitar hummed through an open window. Rose unpacked her silver earrings and declared, "This place demands drama." She wasn't wrong. That evening, we followed the sound of clapping into a small courtyard restaurant. No stage, no spotlight, just a circle of locals, wine glasses clinking, laughter rising and falling like breath. And in the center, a woman danced. Not young, older than either of us, mid-70s maybe. Her feet struck the tile with the force of thunder, arms slicing through the air with elegance and fire. Her face wasn't smiling, it wasn't trying to impress. She danced like she owed nothing to anyone. And everything to herself. I couldn't take my eyes off her. She's older than we are, Rose whispered. I leaned forward. She's everything I forgot I could be. When the performance ended, people applauded. I didn't. I just sat there, hands resting in my lap, heart pounding not from envy, but from remembrance. That night, I couldn't sleep. My knees ached. My back protested. But my spirit felt louder than it had in years. The next evening we went out again, different place, younger crowd, a converted warehouse near the docks. The music was newer, faster, heavier but alive. At first we just watched. People our grandchildren's age danced like joy had deadlines. Then something in me shifted. I stood up. Rose blinked. Where are you going? Out there, I said, alone. She smiled. Good. I stepped onto the floor, not to impress, not to prove, but to remember. At first I was stiff, awkward, but the beat found my bones. The years fell away like dust from an old jacket. A young man passed and smiled not mockingly but gently. He offered a hand. I took it. Spun once, laughed, let go. Rose joined me not long after. We danced until the soles of our shoes complained. We walked home barefoot. Irresponsible, joyful, free. For the first time in decades, I didn't feel like someone's grandmother sneaking out. I felt like me. Unapologetic. Alive. When we got back to the guest house that night, there was a letter waiting for me. Folded into thirds, no envelope, just my name scribbled across the outside in a hand I knew too well. Michael's. I didn't open it right away. I left it on the nightstand and took a shower. I brushed my hair. I moisturized like it mattered again. Then I sat down, turned on the bedside lamp, and slowly unfolded the paper. 3 short paragraphs. Mom, we don't understand what you're doing. The kids are confused. Chloe cried. We thought you were just upset. But this, This is something else. If you're trying to punish us, you've made your point. Come home, let's talk. Please, Michael. No apology, no ownership, just concern for the chaos I'd created by disappearing from the role they had assigned me. I folded it carefully, placed it in the drawer beside my scarf, and went to bed. In the morning, I made tea. The sun spilled across the tiles, and for the first time, I didn't feel like I had to respond. Later that day, Chloe messaged again. Grandma, where are you now? That photo from Lisbon was amazing. I showed it to my art teacher. She said you have a good eye. Can I call you soon? I smiled, then frowned. I hadn't sent her a photo. I opened my phone gallery. There it was, me on the balcony in Lisbon, arms resting on the rail, face turned to the street below. Rose must have taken it. I looked, whole. Not smiling, not posing, just there. I replied, Seville now. It's hot, loud, and absolutely alive. You'd love it. That afternoon I sat alone near the river. Boats drifted by, pigeons argued over crumbs. I opened my journal again and began a new page. Things I no longer apologize for. Wanting space. Wanting more. Not answering the phone. Saying no. Leaving quietly. Coming back louder. That evening we found a bar tucked between laundry lines. No tourists. No menu. Just locals and a woman with a voice like rusted velvet singing about longing, about being left behind, and about getting back up again. She wasn't singing to me, but I understood every word. And when we walked home under the low-hung stars, Rose asked me quietly, so, what now? I looked at her, smiled, and said, now we write our own invitations. And we only show up where we're truly seen. I didn't go home right away. We left Seville and spent a few more days in Granada. Then one morning, Rose packed her bag and said, I think I've danced enough for this chapter. We hugged at the train station. No tears, no drama. Just see you when we both feel like flying again. I stayed one more night in Barcelona, in a quiet room above a cafe where the smell of bread rose with the morning sun. Then I booked a flight not because I missed anyone, but because I had nothing left to prove. The airport was loud again. It didn't bother me. The flight was long. I didn't mind. I sat by the window this time, watched the clouds roll beneath us like the soft spine of a sleeping giant. When I landed, no one was waiting. I didn't expect them to be. The taxi home felt like traveling backward through memory, past the library where I used to take Michael, past the diner where Frank and I had shared milkshakes before bills, before parenthood, before forgetting to be in love. My house was still there. Porch swept. Plants watered. Carol had done her job. I unlocked the door. Everything was still, but everything had changed. I didn't unpack right away. I made tea, sat at the kitchen table and watched the steam rise. Then came the message. Are you home? From Chloe. I replied, yes. 10 minutes later, can I come by? Yes, doors open. She arrived in 20. No speech, no theatrics, just a hug that lasted long enough to say everything that words would fumbled. We sat across from each other. She looked older, not in years but in knowing. I read your list, she said. I blinked. My list? She smiled. You left your notebook open in one of the photos. I didn't mean to read it, but it felt like you were talking to me. She reached into her bag and handed me a spiral-bound notebook. The first page read, Things I refuse to inherit quietly. The belief that women outgrow desire. The idea that aging is decline. The habit of saying I'm fine when I'm not. The shame passed down like furniture. I looked up at her. This girl, my granddaughter. The next me, but braver. You're going to be just fine, I whispered. She nodded, because you were. Later that evening, Michael and Jenna showed up. No flowers, no grand gestures, just quiet, careful words. They sat at my kitchen table not as hosts, not as people seeking forgiveness but as guests. People who realized the seat they once took for granted now had to be earned. Michael handed me a letter. I don't expect to be forgiven, he said, but I'd like to try. I didn't answer right away. I just poured tea and placed the pot in the center of the table. We drank in silence. the kind that isn't cold but warm, the kind that follows truth. Before they left, I handed Michael an envelope. Inside, a copy of the tickets I had cancelled. "So we don't forget," I said. He nodded. And that night, I stood in front of the mirror, unwrapped my yellow scarf, and saw a face not faded but filled with memory, with choice, with joy that no longer asked for permission. And in the quiet that followed, I wrote one last thing in my notebook. I was never too old. I was just never asked if I still dreamed. Now, I don't wait to be asked. I go.